guys, Work here, welcome back to the bench. So today we are back on our Remington R1 project, and we're going to finish this thing up tonight by installing the two last components that we've got, and that would be a trigger and a hammer. So we're going to put these in tonight, and in order to install these, we have to completely strip the frame of the pistol. So let's go ahead and get started. First things first, as always, go ahead and clear the pistol, drop the mag. Then let's go ahead and take it down. Now, I know not everybody uses the tools. I like using the tools to pull these things apart, just makes it a little bit easier. Pull our takedown lever out, slide the slide up and off, and we're going to sit the slide to the side and focus on the frame. Next thing we need to do is pull the grips off. I'm going to use an Allen wrench to do that. There's one side. Okay. With the grips off, on mine, I need to go ahead and pull my mag well out. Just going to grab a mallet. Remember on the install when I said these things were on here tight? I wasn't kidding. Mag well's off. So now we can go ahead and start actually really stripping this frame. So the first thing we need to do is we need to pull the mainspring housing out. Now the mainspring housing is where the hammer spring is actually located. You're going to want to make sure that the hammer is down to do this. And with the hammer down, go ahead and grab an appropriately sized punch. I'm going to go ahead and get a block to be able to sit this on to kind of get things up and off the ground so I'm not pressing on the hammer weird. And it looks like in my case I may have to tap my mainspring housing pin out. It's a little tight. This is the first time this gun has ever been apart. Yep. Okay. So with a couple of taps now, here's my pin for the mainspring housing. Let's go ahead and set that aside. And now the mainspring housing should just slide right out of the bottom of the frame. And there it is. So we're going to set that aside because we're not doing anything with the mainspring housing. So with the mainspring housing out, next thing we've got to do is we've got to pull the safety out. So I believe that we should be able to rotate the safety up, and we should be able to just kind of wiggle it. There we go. So my safety was really tight in there, but enough wiggling and out comes the safety. Now the grip safety will pop right off, and we've got a detent here that we need to watch out for because this is just a detent and a spring in there. This is what holds that safety in, so actually that's pretty well captured in there. I don't think we're going to be doing enough for it to matter that much, so I'll just put that back in there and just keep an eye on that. So next I can go ahead and press this pin out right here, and that's going to release my hammer. So there's our hammer. That's one of the components that we're going to be replacing. We'll set that aside for now. Now out the bottom is going to come our sear spring set. Set that aside, and then we can look in here and we can see the setup, the arrangement of these components, because we're going to have to put all of these back together in there. It's because our pin's falling out. Oh, that's all right. Got one more. There we go. So we'll have to figure out how that all went back together once we put it back in there. So we'll set that all aside. So we are 99% of the way there now. Now all we have to do is pull the magazine release off, and then the trigger's going to fall kind of right out the back. So let's go ahead and get this magazine release off. So we're going to push the magazine release out just slightly, and it should spin. There we go. 90 degrees, and our magazine release pops right out the side, and then our trigger should slide right out the back. So to get an idea of what's going on with our trigger here and why it's kind of rattling around in there, let's go ahead and grab our calipers out. So our original trigger in this thing is 0.901 inches. Our new trigger is 0.929 inches. So let's go ahead and slide our new trigger in and see just how much space we've got in there. So we are a little bit tight. Actually, once that thing's in there, it's not tight at all. It's perfect. I think I'm going to clean up the side a little bit where it slides right here. So you can see once this thing's in here, it's actually really nice and solid and rigid. But I think I am going to clean up. I can feel a little bit of grit as I slide it back. So I think I'm just going to ever so lightly 2000 grit back here. And then I'm going to clean up the bow a little bit. Let's look at something really quick while we're at it. Toss the trigger back in. And let's toss a magazine in. And there is no contact on the magazine, so that's good. Let's go ahead and just do a little cleanup work on this trigger. I mean, the trigger is already relatively clean. We're just going to 2000 grit it to get everything nice, polished and clean, and as smooth as we can possibly get it. So as I was saying last time with the Beretta, you guys would be amazed at what some just dry 2000 grit sandpaper will do. The amount of polish and finish that you can get with 2000 grit is just insane. So with those little cleanups, let's go ahead and slide this guy back in. Oh, that's going to be nice. So, now that we've got our trigger back in here, let's go ahead and reinsert our magazine release. So we're going to push it in, pull it out part way, move our spring back. There we go. Magazine release is back in, trigger is back in, and notice now how minimum the movement is on this trigger. I mean, it's just significantly better than it was. So now that the trigger is back in, let's go ahead and switch our focus from the frame over to our hammer. So the first thing that I'm going to do with this, what we need to do is we need to transfer the hammer bar here. Yeah, let's look at cleaning up a couple of surfaces as well. So for this, I'm going to be using some of my finer grit stones, because the goal here is going to be to clean up this surface and this surface and try to get these as sharp as I possibly can. So let's go ahead and grab this out. Let's go ahead and grab some unicorn blood. Let's see if we can't clean up this trigger just a little bit. So far so good. We're just getting kind of through the finish now. So I'm not going to do too many passes on here. This is a 3000 grit stone that we are wet sanding with. I think we're going to call that good. So with that all cleaned up, let's go ahead and swap our hammer strut out. So we're just going to push it through here. Looks like it is going to take a little bit of tapping. Okay guys, so it is the next day now. After a long battle and some pounding, I finally got this pin to start working out. Now, I don't know if we're going to be able to replace the strut over here. Oh, that was disgusting. I don't know if we'll be able to reuse the pin over on the new hammer, but I know that we'll be able to use the strut. So let's go ahead and finish getting that out. Let's grab a little punch. This is a little pin, so a little punch it is for it. Okay, sorry I had to take that off camera and hit it on something significantly more sturdy than the bench here. But with that, I finally got our pin out, our strut, which means that we can put everything back now. So what we're going to do is we're replacing the hammer. So let's go ahead and grab our new hammer. We smoothed up a couple of the surfaces last time. So now we're just going to set the strut aside real quick, and we're just going to take the hammer. We're going to do what we've done on a lot of the other parts. We're going to smooth out and kind of polish just a little bit, these sides here. Now, I'm not going to be a big stickler about it looking a little bit worn. I just want the best fit in here that I can possibly get. So I'm going to smooth those sides a little bit. Now, we're going to go ahead and put our strut back in. And I think for that, I'm going to need to go off camera again. So I'll be right back. Okay, that went in significantly smoother than it came out. So now we've got our hammer put back together. Now we need to start putting the trigger mechanism back together. So the trigger mechanism in this is an 80 series. Now, I didn't know until I started pulling this apart what the difference was between an 80 series and a 70 series. And at this point, I know that there are people who will vote one way or the other. I don't really care. It's just a few extra pieces, and my calibrated finger isn't calibrated enough to be able to tell the difference between those. So what we're going to do is, first we're going to get pieces of what we need together. So we've got our sear and our disconnector, and this is the lever that's going to go with these, and then we've got our pin for those, and then we've got our hammer pin, and the actual safety plunger lifter here. So the way that these are going to go together is disconnector and the sear are going to kind of go over each other like this, and then this little guy is going to go back behind them like this. So essentially these are going to sit here. This guy is going to be on the other side. These are going to sit on top of that. Hammer is going to sit here with this guy on this side. So that is kind of what we're looking at, and then the hammer is going to go on top of everything. So let's go ahead and put this together now. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take the back of my frame here. You can see the trigger bar in here. And I'm going to take my disconnector. And there's a hole up here that the disconnector goes through. And that this end here is going to go up through this hole. We're going to slide that into that hole, and then the flat portion of the disconnector is going to lay down here right up against the trigger bar. The sear is next going to go on, and the sear is just going to straddle the disconnector. Okay? So now we can look through the side, and we can kind of get our holes lined up. So there you can see the holes. So now we're going to take our pin. We're going to go ahead and slide our pin just part way through. At this point, we just want to grab the sear and the disconnector with the pin. So we're only going to go about halfway through, and we're going to leave this gap over here, because in that gap is going to go this little guy. Now, he's going to sit in here like this, which is a little bit tricky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit it like this. I'm going to hold this. I'm going to try to slide this while holding it up against this top portion of the frame. Up and into, there we go, there. It's kind of just trial and error on how exactly you're going to be able to get that thing in there. But once those are in, now you're down to the easy part. Next, let's go ahead and put in our spring. Now the spring, I was a little bit confused when I was doing this. But this spring is actually going to go, I thought it needed to go down and like underneath this stuff, but it actually just sits right on top of it. So there's a groove down here on the bottom that this portion of the spring fits in. So I'm just going to slide the spring up here, set it in place, and that groove being in the proper spot is what is actually lining everything up. Once you get that groove in the right spot, you can actually grab your mainspring housing, and you can toss your mainspring housing in just lightly, and that's going to hold all of your spring components in. So next we can grab our hammer. We can toss our hammer in, and if you can't get your hammer all the way in, you can push the mainspring housing down a little bit. You don't want to be fighting the spring, that mainspring, to do this. Okay, we're going to do something very similar to what we did with the last. We're going to put the pin in the hammer side, and we're going to walk it in just a little bit. We're not going to go all the way across, because now we need to put this piece in, and it's going to sit just like this with this hammer pin actually holding it in. So we can drop that in from the top, and you can feel it hit the hammer pin a little bit. There we go. And then just push the hammer pin in. Okay, so now our hammer is in. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put in our thumb safety. So if we push that in, we can line up the hole back here. We need our hammer down. So thumb safety pressed in, hammer down. Now we can grab our safety, slide the safety in, and just some wiggling and pushing, and it should pop right in. We got to make sure that our detent is far enough forward. Hard getting in here. There we go. Okay. Thumb safety is in. Hammer is in. So now we can verify. That's bad lighting. So now if we verify down here, you guys can't really see it, but my hammer strut is sitting right in the middle of my mainspring housing, which means I can push my mainspring housing up. Let's go ahead and drop our hammer. Now I can push my mainspring housing up. Again, verifying that your hammer strut sits in the middle of your mainspring housing. Take your mainspring pin. Now the mainspring pin has one dimpled side and one convex side. The convex side is going to go in first, and we're working from the left side of the firearm. So convex in. We're going to push that straight through. There we go. A couple taps, put it in. And then you can hear it click on that detent that was in there. Alright, so that is it for the main portion of the frame. All of our new components are in. Our new trigger is in. Feels really nice. Our new hammer is in. So let's go ahead and get everything else put back together. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to reinstall the mag well. Let's go ahead and put that on. We're going to slide that up and pull it down There we go. So a couple of smacks from that, and the mag well is back on. Let's go ahead and get our grips back on. Now, with all that back together, we should be able to replace our slide. Everything, in theory, should work properly. So let's go ahead and get our barrel, our slide assembly put back together, and check functionality. Safety works, grip safe works, and final moment of truth. Hammer works. Ooh, and that is nice. Let's check the trigger pull on this thing now. Alright, so our new trigger pull on our 1911 is right at 3 pounds, and I'm fine with that. For what this gun is going to be, this is going to be a USPSA gun, and I don't want high trigger pulls. I like the lower trigger pulls. They're nice, and this one is light, super crisp, and I'm super happy with this thing. It's just right. Here's what we got as far as trigger pull goes. Check out the trigger. So, got a little bit of take up on it, and that's getting that safety plunger picked up and out of the way. So there's the take up, and bang. And that's all the pre-travel there is. And then here's the reset. That's it. So guys, I am super happy with this. This project has given us a unique look for our R1. It's given us that square hammer that we're kind of going with all of our hammer-fired guns that we've got. The SPO1's got it, the PO7 has it, and the PO1 will have it shortly. As well as a nice unique trigger that doesn't have that nasty rattle anymore. I mean, this new trigger is nice and solid in here. It's super smooth, and it's slick. And I am super pumped with what we got out of this build. So that's it for this time, guys. We're placing the hammer and the trigger on our Remington R1. Now, you'll find the parts for both of these down in the description below. These are actually both Amazon components. So I can post affiliate links down below. Take a look. This hammer did take a little bit of work. I ended up having to clean out the hole for the hammer pin just a little bit. But with that little bit of work, now we've got a 3-pound trigger, which is lighter than the trigger that we had with the original hammer, as well as so much more crisp. So if you liked the video, guys, go ahead and remember to like and subscribe down below. If you want to keep an eye out for any of our upcoming projects, or if you're looking for a review on either one of these components, go ahead and hit that notification button. Remember, I appreciate every one of you, and until next time, do your research, get informed, and get to work.